Driver, please don't leave the meese running, for this is Pod Taxi by Warui Deshou, or more accurately, our second stream. Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, MBs. Welcome. Happy Friday to you all. It's a very happy Friday for me because I'm no longer dealing with the drudgery of work. I have a giant mug of beer in my hand, and I have a very good friend and confidant joining me, of course, to talk about all things Odd Taxi today, and that is, of course, the Subtle Doctor.
Hello, friends. Welcome. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody's doing better than me. I'll put it that way. Because my week has been not great. So it's been physically and emotionally demanding. But the good news is it's over.
That's something.
In a matter of hours, I'm going to go home. In the United States, we celebrate Labor Day Monday. So I've got a long weekend. Yeah, so there's good things on the horizon. Having said that, I may not have the verve that is normal for today, but Shadon, luckily enough, has verve enough to spare for two.
I think you mean alcohol.
Right, exactly. But I'm gonna listen. I couldn't miss the chance to talk about this show because it's quite a thing, and I'm excited to get to the questions and get to the discussion and chat about I don't know, our favorite walrus son.
Indeed, there's a lot to discuss. I mean, the show is a trove of riches when it comes to talking points and things to think about, which is always welcome. And it continues to be exciting and interesting as well, which is always good. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty good. I mean, we slept on this, to be quite honest. We just let the odd taxi just drive right past us, and we never flagged it down.
We did not.
When the opportunity presents itself, and I regret that. But, well, better to be fashionably late than not, which is probably how I'm going to spend the rest of my night, actually, after this wraps up. I'm literally going to be, as soon as this podcast finishes at the time of recording, I will be turning my computer off, throwing my coat on, I will be heading out to Manchester, and I will be drinking my way into the early hours of the morning.
Well,
good luck. No one try and contact me tomorrow. You won't get a response. People will be flashing like a little torch into my eye. Like, my God, he's just lifeless.
He's coming to us.
I'll end up looking like one of those fully posable action figures you see, like, little wooden dolls, except it's clearly bent out of shape. And somehow I'll still be at home. Anyway, jokes about my own idiocy aside, we're going to be, of course, talking about patron questions today for our second stream, and then our own talking points. This being the second stream format, by the way, there will be no full summary of the plot of these episodes. I strongly suspect, given what you can understand in the chat and anyone else who would otherwise be listening to this pod, that they have more likely than not watched the entire show at this point, to which I commend you. Restraint is neither a word I will spell nor understand.
Anime restraint. It's a different skill set. No, I don't know. I thought that I would not be able to stop myself from watching it, but I've managed to hold on for the sake of the pod, to have this be as authentic of a, this is episodes 5 through 8, and nothing about later episodes is contaminating my takes. So
you can answer asking if the stream has died, to which I would say no. It's just undead.
No, it doesn't look like nothing on our end is malfunctioning.
Yeah, I think Yukon needs to take the coat hanger he's used as the improvised aerial for his Wi-Fi. He just needs to adjust it. Hold it higher, my friend. You'll get the full 4 bars. I promised you. Anyway. So we're going to get to all of the Odd Taxi discussion a little bit, but before that, we do have a bit of a housekeeping announcement thing to do. So we'll keep this brief because there'll be a more formalized announcement on our Patreon later in actual text that you can read later that won't sound like complete gibberish as it otherwise does come from my mouth. But to the point, after this particular season, which is currently Sunny Boy, Odd Taxi, and Death Parade, our Patreon will end. That is it. It will go. Does that mean the pod is going? No! Do not panic. Do not, start mailing me things. Unless they're nice things, in which case you can do that all you want. I'm not going to stop you. But rather, I think between me and Doc, we've realized with our own lives getting more busy and more complicated as time goes by, that I mean, hell, I barely managed to make it in time to to get to this pod today, due to my own work commitments. I
Hmm.
know you, of course, had to delay doing the pod this week, rightly because of your family, which I will not
Hmm.
elaborate because it's not my business to say so. But family, of course, as people would rightly understand, does come first. So we've come to the conclusion ultimately that while it has been good and we've done great work doing this particular style of week on week pod for 3 different shows at once, chosen by patrons. Unfortunately, it's becoming a bit too much for us to sustain. And so at this particular time, we think it's good to bow out this format and move back to something like what we did prior to when Stream of Thought started, which is we do something like a monthly pod, just the one, and it'll be a full fat, full blown, like, 3 course meal banquet on a single film or show of some description. So, what does this mean? Well, for one, we're going to retire the Patreon. Patreon subscribers who are still active will get a special role in our Discord once this all is over. So, people who have supported us for all this time, for which we are immensely grateful for your contributions before, up until now, whether you're new or old, like, means the world to me that people are actually willing to pay money, not to shut me up, but to make me talk more, which is not what I usually expect. But anyway, we're going to do that, of course. We'll migrate instead over to Ko-fi or Ko-fi or Coffee or whatever you want to say. And it will be a voluntary thing where it'll be more like a tip jar. If you want to put money in to support us, you're more than welcome to. If you want to keep that money to spend on your own kind of thing, like, I don't know, bags of Doritos,
Yeah.
bottles of beer, or maybe scented candles if you're feeling that way, you go do that. That's fine. I'll hopefully be trying to pilot doing some more regular content solo, like I did previously when Doc was away for a couple of weeks, where I'll still try and discuss like currently airing stuff, see how that pans out. But yeah, it will be all changed as of the end of the season. So this is it. This is the final time we'll be doing second stream, and at least it's bowing out on a high note with Odd Taxi, of course.
Yes, yes, it is going out on top, and probably Deshou the third as well. I mean, I think Death Parade is a beloved property,
Yeah.
and so yeah, we're ending both of those on a thumbs up. And I mean, I'll just add to what Shadon said, and say that this is, I think, going to be a case of using the old. I'm gonna try out the old sports cliche, addition by subtraction. I think that, as my co-host rightly put it, the weekly format and having to do episodic analysis on the weekly has been, it's getting to be too much. And it is, for me, I'll speak for me when I say that's a little bit, it can be draining at times intellectually. And I think that when we're going to do a monthly podcast about when we look at the whole thing, a whole anime, film, TV show, OAV, I think you are going to, in that podcast, get the best of us. Creatively speaking, entertaining wise, we'll have more time to plan, more time to think. We'll be able to rewatch things. We'll be able to read things. And I just think that on a per episode basis, you will get a higher quality podcast. I know also that we are planning to do a non-anime pod per month. And that's going to be, I mean, nothing is going to be paywall gated anymore. I don't think, maybe, I don't know, who knows? But as far as we know now, nothing will be paywall gated. Those two things won't be. And the kind of the non-anime thing will be less rigorously researched and more, let's have some fun with the thing and kind of shoot from the hip and talk about it and enjoy a fun piece of media together. That's not anime. So that'll give us a chance to branch out a little bit in terms of what we cover.
I mean, at some point, I feel like I want to get you and me to do a podcast. Speaking of non-anime, but animation rather. I feel like at some point you and I could have a bang-up time doing a dual podcast on what I think are the exemplars of two respective characters' presentation animation, which is to cover essentially the animated films Batman: Mask of the Phantasm and Into the Spider-Verse. which are, in
Oh,
my opinion, the best films
good.
that represent both characters.
They're
I
so
reckon we
good.
could do, like, there's a lot to talk about both films individually, but also how they compare and how they are celebrations of each character. But that's for the future, and that's something I'd very much like to do because I've got strong opinions on that kind of stuff outside of anime. Believe me, I'm not just lockstep into like whatever comes out of Japan. There's some stuff from the West I occasionally like beer and
Yeah.
burgers that cost more than £10 and aren't made from shit like McDonald's. I like Western stuff occasionally, so I think it's worth talking about it.
It's true. It's true. And like,
Mhm.
uh, like, like Shadon said, big thank you to everyone who has supported us up to
Yeah.
now. I mean, I know we probably have some like maybe one or two things that we're going to keep in mind that patrons have asked us to do while the Patreon's been going, and we'll try to pay that off going forward, and get some content out there on that stuff. And if you do want to keep supporting us, of course, like Sean said, there will be a Ko-fi. And the Discord is like one of the things I love about our Discord is that it's the Patreon has been actually a really nice way to make sure that the Discord is cozy and the Discord is full of really cool people who aren't interested in causing trouble or being a pain in the ass. They just want to be part of a smart and fun community of friends who love anime and other stuff too. So we are going to figure out a way to keep that. I don't want to open wide the doors because I've had a bad experience at another outlet where we kicked the door open and it was not really fun at all.
I've got no bullshit tolerance nor filter, and so therefore the simplest way for me is to keep the fucking door shut. But as Doc says, we're not gonna preclude
Not
the possibility
totally.
we might not let certain cool people come in. So
Yeah,
in other words, we get to be
figure this
really judgy. So why not?
maybe we'll tie it to Ko-fi. We'll work on it. This is all gonna be ironed out and put in words and typed out on the Discord and Patreon and probably eventually Twitter. So, but we want to let you guys know, and if people may be unsubscribing throughout the month, that's fine. And once we get the last and final, we need to make sure, I guess, to get the last and final Death Parade up on the Patreon before the end of September. And we will try to do that. We will figure that out so that you won't be charged for October when we shut down and go to our new format.
I do believe Patreon actually disable billing for particular months as well, so we can just do that if we run over.
Well, that sounds fantastic. Who knew? Had a Patreon for years. Didn't know that.
Boom, baby.
So,
back of the net. Love it. All right. So that's our housekeeping stuff out of the way. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for everyone supporters, be patrons or not. That is appreciated. The pod will continue. The show must go on. And it's going to go on right now, I think, actually. We will talk about Odd Taxi. So, again, just a quick reminder while we're still doing this format. Second stream, there is no plot summary. We are just going to go into questions and talking points, and context will be provided as we go for what is going on. But otherwise, we're also assuming you have seen the episodes yet. I can say with absolute certainty that if you are inexplicably somehow watching this and have not listened to our first Odd Taxi podcast, and have also somehow fit into the very tiny Venn diagram of people who've also not seen the show, turn this the fuck off right now. Unless you're driving, turn it off when you're driving, and then just pull over for a bit and watch the entire show. Yeah,
something.
Take the time to watch the entire show.
Mm-hmm.
Just do it. It's that fucking good.
It is. And before we get to our questions, I will talk about episode directors really briefly.
Oh yes.
Here. So creatives. I'm going to look at 3 episode directors. So first of all, we're going to look at Shigeki Awai, who directed episode 5. And let me tell you, Shigeki Owai's CV, massive.
Oh,
Like, not necessarily like Megumi Hayashibara massive, but pretty damn long. And, this looks like someone who's been working consistently since at least the late 80s.
so as far as CV length is concerned, we're talking SpongeBob unrolling a scroll joke here,
Yeah.
where it goes on and on and on and comes through the windows.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was going to say 90s, but like as I'm scrolling, I caught that they did key animation for 3 episodes of Super Beast Machine God Dan Cougar. And I'm like, well, that's an 80s mecha show. So their career goes back very far. I mean, done a lot of different stuff, like good and bad, and mostly like key animation. Some episode direction in there. There's like several Lupin the Third specials, a whole bunch of Food Wars, some animation on parts of both El Hazard OAVs. You got your Gundam, Macross Frontier.
Yes.
Even we got what episode is the Macross Frontier? It is key animation for episode 12. And then a few different Gundams, key animation for 11 episodes of Zeta Gundam and 7 episodes of Double Zeta. So, and that was like, yeah, that was the mid 80s. So Zeta's 85 or 84. So, and then, I mean, straight through like the 90s with things like Nana and, what's another 90s show? I see some 2000 early aughts ones like Scrap Princess. Current stuff, relatively current stuff, like of course Odd Taxi, and then Rolling Girls, and it's like I said, mostly key animation. Every once in a while, they'll direct something like the Taboo Charming Mother OAV. I have to now click on this to see what this is.
I was going to say though, Doc, when you were listing all that stuff
boy.
off,
It is. I'll tell you the 3 themes that Anime News Network has for Taboo Charming Mother.
I wonder what they might be.
Hentai.
Okay.
Incest.
Mm-hmm.
Mothers. I'm closing this window now.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I mean,
he directed a hentai. Fantastic. Yeah. So, like I said, really, I mean, just some Yu-Gi-Oh, some Precure.
Sorry to interrupt, but that fucking special you mentioned, what was that localized to in the West? Was it called Oedipusy?
I hope so. It looks like it just Taboo Charming. I know I have, but yes.
I say that in the same way, like Doc's just going to be there driving home later, and it's just going to pop into his head, and he's going to feel utterly ashamed. If ever there was a reason that we need to bin our Patreon, this is because I make jokes like that. Anyway, do carry on.
It looks like Taboo Charming Mother is the localized title. It's just called Enbo in Japanese. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So the next episode director we're going to talk about is Kenichi Nishida. Not as intimidating of a CV. Hasn't been in the industry, as long, but has done a lot of storyboarding actually. For Hungry Heart Wild Striker, like half that show storyboarded. Some Hunter x Hunter OAVs. I guess those are actually from the late 90s, early aughts. So it goes back farther in time than I thought. Has been working on the franchise called Mysterious Joker. Is that Kaito Joker? Is that what that is? Yes. Okay, I have seen some of the show. That's a fun little kids anime about a master thief. I really like that. That's a cool show. But all 4 seasons of that they've worked on. This is a random thing I've seen. Little Women 2, Joe's Boys, production advancement. So some literary fare in the catalog of Kenichi Nishida. Trying to see if there's anything that that our audience would particularly enjoy. I mean, Cooking Master Boy, I really like. Doraemon.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but all I could think when you say all this was it's going to turn out he works with the previous person on that hentai. I was just waiting for that to happen.
No.
I wanted to be the timeline we lived in, where you would go through all the creators of these episodes of Odd Taxi, and it would be a reunion of people who worked on that fucking. Oh, if only.
Nothing else really. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on here. There's still like Fantastic Children. Like, I really like Fantastic Children, the anime, but I know that one's not on many people's radars. But yeah, that's the person who directed episodes 2, 6, and 9 of Odd Taxi. So we've seen 2 of their contributions, one still to come. And then we're going to look at the episode director of episodes 3, 7, and 12. Mayu Numayama. So they have a very short CV. It's like 7 items long. And in addition to the Odd Taxi stuff, they directed a couple episodes of Major, the second. I think actually all 3 of the people that we have looked at today have been involved with Major. So they've worked together before on some stuff. Is Major the second an OLM show? I'm looking this up now with my very slow internet as we speak.
Insert your new trial disc. Don't forget.
I know. Where is that studio? And ANN, it's hard to find this. It's much easier to find. Oh, there we go. Japanese companies, animation production, OLM. I was correct. Good instinct, self.
Nice. Ding.
Yes. So Numiyama-san has also directed 2 episodes of Aikatsu, very popular magical girl television show. Something called Cinderella 9, an episode there. And Kami-sama Minarai, a couple the TV series and movie, did some episode directing and unit directing there. So smaller CV. I'm guessing this person is newer to the industry, or at least, just less experienced, but I've enjoyed their work thus far on Taxi.
Excellent.
So that's all we have this week.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, then. Let's, in that case, keep on driving, keep on going towards our destination here. Let's take a brief stopover at, Patron Question Town. And we're going to start with a pair of questions from Rackham. Shout out to you, Rackham. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being awesome. Sorry.
Why do I always think Aikatsu is a magical girl show? Yukinon in chat says it's an idol show. I don't know. Maybe it's to do with the presentation and the fandoms that I, in my head, thought bled over. Like, I guess I saw the same people that were talking about Precure, talking about Aikatsu, and saw the art and just assumed. But, yeah. It's from a collectible card game. So, yep, it's an idol show, so I need to fix that in my brain. It might take a few tries, but thank you, Yukinon, for letting me know. Anyway, please continue.
We'll sort the firmware out, don't worry. Right, so first 2 questions from Rackham. One, what, if any, real-life social media stunts does Kabasawa's, that's the hippo kid, who's really into becoming a viral social media celebrity.
Internet Batman.
Yeah. What he wishes. What does his online calling out / challenge of Dobu remind you of? Okay, so I need to provide a bit of context for this before I give my answer, because this also, by the way, just as a preface, is probably going to lead into what might very well be Warui Deshou's first Snopes article on us. Because I tried to look up the thing I'm going to provide the example of here, because I remember reading about it many, many years ago, and I couldn't find it on first glance. I'd have to dig a little deeper. I didn't have the time to do so. So take my example with a pinch of salt. It is anecdotal memory and could very well be wrong. But anyway, for context, what happens in these episodes is that completely separately to whatever Dobu's doing, Taichi, the character we met in episode 4, is still pursuing Odokawa, and at one point follows him into a club which he has been invited to by the other kid with the winning lottery ticket. But point being, he goes in there with Dobu's gun, fires a bullet into the ceiling and basically terrorizes the place looking for Odokawa. Doesn't find it because Odokawa manages to sneak out. But what happens is that Taichi, that being Kawasawa, the hippo kid, he has at this point gone viral and assumed that like the responsibility of tracking down Dobu, like, you know, because he's a criminal and he needs to be brought to justice. But Taichi, and I want to use the hugest of all pins in this for my latest talking point, Taichi identifies Dobu as the person who committed the assault or the, you know, like the terrorist acts, or whatever you want to call it, basically, on the club, when it clearly was not him. And this then resultantly leads into him getting more accumulated internet fame and following. He has a bunch of people scouring the streets for Dobu, including at a Halloween parade, where one particular individual is thought to be the skull kid, like to be I'm getting all names, so you know what I mean. You know, the kid who
let me find him. So he's
it's a Meshinger,
Hajime.
basically.
Tanaka,
Tanaka, that's it. He's thought to be Tanaka. And so all these like coincidences again, because Odd Taxi is all about like the tapestry of like, you know, how people weave together, like, you know, and how it's actually a smaller world than you might think. And the irony of this is also unfortunately delicious in that Dobu is mistaken for Taichi, and in turn, Dobu is attacking someone who he believes is Taichi.
Yes.
Which is horrible. But make no mistake, though I might, this particular individual gets the shit kicked out of him by Dobu. He is brutally beaten, like he's bleeding in the alleyway that he's left in. And there's a little bit afterwards where, because Odokawa is with him, Kabasawa actually films Dobu, like, you know, in the aftermath of this act. And in turn, catches Odokawa's voice, but not his face, which is key here. On the video, and then believes that someone in his own little vigilante group that he's created has betrayed them, because how else would anyone recognize him in that mask? But that's a separate point I'm going to come back to later. So that's your context here. And now I'm going to go on to my example, and this still haunts me to this day. And I, again, must apologize for not having been able to find this beforehand. I'll try and find it in the coming days, because it happened many, many years back. But there was a guy in Birmingham who was of, I think he was Asian or possibly even Indian descent. I think he might well have been Indian, right? And he was a gentleman who, I don't remember the exact condition he had. We would describe him as special needs, which I know is not the correct term for that. But again, I'm going anecdotally and my memory is very moth-eaten on this. I wonder why that might be, by the way. But anyway. And what this particular person liked to do was he liked to take photographs of everything. So he'd go out and he'd take photographs of the neighborhood he lived in, you know, the community, the parks, and resultantly, the people in these parks, which included children. Now, here's the thing, right? This particular person was not a paedophile. He did not have any interest in taking pictures of children specifically. He just took pictures of everything. And unfortunately, he had no concepts of the fact that people might not want pictures taken of them, you know?
Sure.
But that's just what he liked to do, because that was a function of his condition. Now, a bunch of people in the community became aware of this. And this resulted in them forming a Facebook group to basically find him, and they murdered him. They killed him for that, when he actually hadn't committed any crime, at least not in law. The only crime he arguably committed, if he wanted to expand outside the law, was just the fact that he had no idea that what he was doing might be viewed by people as, you know, an invasion of privacy, and possibly also as a lead into, you know, child abuse and all that. And this is the thing that I find really chilling about what Kabasawa has done, because it's not like, I would feel, this still makes me sound awful, but I would feel better about what happened here if he was the one who got the shit kicked out of him, not this completely random person.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, he has brought this completely, like, innocent individual under his, like, you know, in his slipstream of chasing after Dobu, and it's gotten them really hurt as a result. Like, he is playing with forces he does not comprehend, Although arguably the result of the Adobu seems like to feel that same way too, just about a different thing, which again just goes to show how this text
Yeah.
here does great like parallels, contrasts,
Yeah.
ironies, you name
And
it.
Shun Imai as well is a big the skunk question mark guy who won the lottery.
Ugh.
Definitely like messing around like, oh, it's just online, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, there's a rude awakening in store for
Can
him.
I put something crazy into context, by the way, about
Sure.
his particular decision with the lottery ticket while we're here?
Sure.
He says he's going to cash it around the time that Mystery Kiss's single comes out because he wants to spend it on their singles. That's correct, I believe. Now, here's the thing, right? That is already absurd in its own right, because why would he want to spend like his billion yen on all those singles? But I noticed on one of the flyers for Mystery Kiss, and I could be wrong about this, but I'm
Mhm.
fairly confident right. It was going to be released on Christmas Day.
I think
Where
so.
are we currently? Where are we currently in the year?
Where
In
are
the
we in the
show's run?
year? I don't know. Or where are we?
Halloween, because it
Okay.
takes place
Okay.
Halloween, the
Okay.
parade. So 2 full fucking months
Wow.
before he cashes that,
Okay.
and he's outed the fact that he has got the winning ticket on social media. He's put a fucking bullseye over him, the
Mm-hmm.
moron.
Yeah.
Like, in an ideal world, no one would, of course, bother him or, like, harm him. They'd be like, hey, congrats, dude, you won. Way, well, yay, that's great. But I'm sorry. If I won the lottery tomorrow, you know what I would do? I would tell not a fucking living soul on this earth. I would not say anything. I would just keep it as quiet as I possibly could. And I would, like, and never mind, like, waiting to cash the ticket. The moment I revealed that it was mine, I'd be like, right, down the phone, give me my fucking money. And I'm just going to,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, go to a bar or something and just drink to calm my nerves. But anyway, yeah,
Totally.
that's the to get back on track to Raham's question. That's the event that reminds me of where there are because basically forming vigilante justice, for whatever reason,
Mm-hmm.
even if a person has committed crimes, can have serious, if not fatal, consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's a desire for people out there to do things when the police can't or won't, and that is funnily enough is also something our taxi addresses through the Diamond Brothers, which we will get to separately in a future question, a future point of discussion. But like, there's a reason that there is procedure and innocents who prove them guilty and all that, and also the fact that beyond all this, Dobu is a violent criminal who will beat the man to death. And like
To the bone.
Kabasawa, for all that he might potentially have noble intentions, but really he's just doing it for his own fame,
They
like he
do.
hides. He's a coward. He doesn't go to school anymore. He's doing it from the safety of like a YouTube call out video, which is honestly cowardly. It's like all reactionaries on the internet, basically, at this point, where they'll make call outs to people, but they'll never front with them. You know.
Yeah. I mean, to answer Rackham's question, I don't really have an incident that this reminds me of. Like in particular, like I think of things that are dissimilar. You're gonna be like, why did you think of that? What it made me think of was, do you do you remember that time Lauren Southern got kicked off of Patreon?
Oh, was that because she wanted to murder immigrants in the sea?
Yes. So she was taking like videos of like her, yeah, like they were chasing like the boat that she said had immigrants on it, and she was like, "We're gonna keep these people from getting into the country." It wasn't America, I think it was another country, but
It might very well have been the English French Channel, possibly. Or no, actually, it wasn't.
the
Again,
Scandinavian country. I don't remember.
it
Anyway,
was it was over on this side of the Atlantic,
okay,
basically.
yeah,
That's all I really recall of it. But the thing is, though, Doc, you say like that might not connect, but it actually does in a way. And this will lead me on to another example I'll give that this reminded me of. Oh, go on. No, sorry, go on. After
oh
you.
yeah, no, I was gonna. That's what I was gonna say. Is it's like it's not like on the surface similar, but it is cowards, as you say, like doing something like kind of masquerading as what they say is just or
Yes,
noble,
pumpkin. Ugh.
but like is really just, you know, nakedly pursuing their own fame, and
Hmm.
other people getting hurt. I mean, there have probably been like just a whole ton of innocent bystanders that like get hurt from online initiatives or call outs or whatever because they're misidentified, or I mean, that's that kind of collateral damage probably happens way more than we even know. um
Hmm.
and it sucks because people
Yeah,
want to play detective.
absolutely. I'll add one other thing on top of this, which will just further clarify the point I'm going to get to, which is there's another example I can think of where I don't think there was necessarily active maliciousness as there was just bonehead stupidity. And
Hmm.
also, most of the point that ties all three things together that we've discussed, all three examples, this one included, which is there is a distinction between the world of information and the world of human interaction that comes to you through your computer or your phone versus what you see in real life. Because, I mean, to go to your Lawrence Southern example, like how many times have immigrants been demonized as this invading, colonizing army when that's not true when you see them on the ground and you have the appropriate context for it? And then, of course, going back to my original example, if, the people who decide that they would murder this man actually, went to the police or maybe spoke to his family or his care workers or anything like that. And I must again stress that I'm speaking strictly from my memory here and not from actual written facts. So I could be remembering this wrong, and I will be happy to correct it otherwise. But
Hmm.
nonetheless, the core idea between all of these is that there is a distinction between like the reality as perceived through the internet or through like online interaction and from at a distance rather than hands-on interaction versus the real world. And this then leads me to my next one and my final one I'll mention before we move on from this question, which is I hope none of you actually know this person in person or know of him in general, but who here has heard of Logan Paul?
Oh, and probably everyone.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
Sadly, probably
So
everyone.
here's the thing. I don't think Logan Paul, from what I've seen of him, is a white supremacist, malicious prick like Lauren Southern, for example, despite all attempts at rehabilitating her. I think he is just ignorant, shall we say. And that's the point I'm going to bring up here, because even though he is ignorant, the same idea of the reality of the world that he lives in and cultivates around himself, like Lauren, like those people, the vigilante group I mentioned,
Mhm.
whatever means they use to cultivate that, they unfortunately sometimes run really hard headfirst into, the real world. And I'm thinking of that much maligned trip that he took to Japan, where he went to a forest that was notably a hotspot of suicide attempts and actual suicides, where they found a man hanging in there, and his reaction to it was, of course, to treat it in his usual jovial manner. And here's the thing, right? Again, I must stress to give him the, I don't know, the 5 cent credit he has deserved. I don't think he's a malicious person like Lawrence Southern. I don't think so. I could be wrong on that. Sure, maybe someone could cite some evidence that shows him, like, saying that QAnon is the best thing to ever happen to America. I don't
Probably
fucking
not.
know.
No.
Do tell me if it exists. I'm happy to be corrected on this.
I
But my
think
point.
either him or his brother last summer that actually was talking about being an anti-racist, kind of riding the
Hmm.
wave of BLM and the protests that were happening, and
Hmm.
all over America. So yeah, I would lean in the direction that you're leaning in as well.
Hmm. Although one must also be careful to acknowledge that in those cases, like any actual support could very well be performative
Sure.
rather than genuine. But to the point here, he similarly, of course, ran into the hard reality of the world around him that did not, match his like, prankster, jokester nature, basically. And all of these examples we've given, and going back to Kabasawa in the show, of course, there is a distinction to be made between the presence one has in an online, disconnected, virtual social world versus the hard, like, grit of reality. Um, and yeah, I'm really happy the show went as far as it did, even though I feel bad for the person it happened to show that there are real fucking
Oh yeah,
consequences to that.
this is
Which,
very smart of the
yeah,
show.
and I will actually go further into that point later because there's even more to say about it that I think we need to address in terms of how people try and like In fact, no, you know what? Let's do it right now. I'll get into this quickly because it actually won't take me too long. But I want to point this out. Can I ask you a question about the show, Doc, and rather specifically about Dobu?
No.
Okay, fine.
Sorry.
This is. Thank you very much for watching, ladies. No, of course.
Yeah,
Okay,
hit me. Ask your monkey question.
Okay, do you think Dobu deserves to go to prison?
Yes.
Do you think he deserves to go to prison for a crime he has not committed?
No. You talking about the bank robbery?
No, I'm talking about the one that Kabasawa accuses him of, the club.
Oh, right. No. There's plenty of other crimes he has actually committed. That
Yes,
he deserves to go to prison for.
exactly. So let's talk about this briefly with Kabasawa here, because Kabasawa, from like literally the moment we met him in the earlier episodes, he has sought out social media fame and prominence. And he is doing exactly the thing that I think a lot of people tend to do when they actively seek that out, which is he eliminates and discards nuance and context. The show is never didactic about this, but it's clear that he will put the entire woes of Tokyo on Dobu's shoulders if it advances his social media message. And this ties back to the example I gave where, like prosecute people for the crimes they have committed, but not those they haven't. Like, there's plenty on Dobu's rap sheet as is to put him away. We've seen that. We've seen him threatening Oda with a gun. That, unless Japan's legal system is incredibly lax, is his fault, and he deserves to go to prison for that. Maybe not necessarily for very long, depending on how the legal code works, but nonetheless, we have seen crimes be committed by him. By the way, this distinction also between us and Kabasawa is important, us being the audience, which I'll get to in a moment. But that is a thing I think the show is really, really genius about, in that it has revealed, without explaining it in blunt terms, that people who actively pursue social media positions of number of followers, like fame, all that kind of thing, where they make it big in being like an influencer or whatever, sometimes or even most of the time will abandon context, nuance, gray area in favor of that. Like, to Kabasawa, whether he realizes or not, the fact that Dobu didn't do the thing that he accused him of is irrelevant. It's getting him the numbers. It's getting him the clicks. And how many times can we point to various right-wing websites like Breitbart, for example, who will completely pretzel twist a story of something mostly, if not entirely innocuous, to, sell their clicks, to sell their merch, you name it. I really appreciate the show. Yeah, I really appreciate the show nailing this dead. I think it's a great point to make. I'll get back to this later because I don't want to go away too far away from the Patreon questions here. But I do also think there's an argument made in the counter in that one should not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, social media can be a force for good. We just sometimes tend to focus too much on the thing in which people start saying that you can take horse pills or whatever to get rid of COVID.
Right, the dewormer.
Yeah. Hey, here's a hint. If it's got a horse on the box, you probably shouldn't have it unless you're a horse.
Man,
or possibly Gale from Coronation Street, but that's neither here nor there.
So bizarre. Yeah. So, but Gogo in chat brought up a really good example. Actually, that seems super duper like, yeah, this is exactly it. That the time Reddit thought it had identified the Boston bomber, and it was just a normal person with a similar backpack. And they got a lot of shit. So that was that
man could have been fucking killed for that.
Exactly. But but like you said, I mean, you made the point for me that I was going to make at the end here is that like,
Sorry.
no, that's all right. No. You said it well. I mean, that I don't think us or the show is like unilaterally saying that people like that social media or that people kind of carrying cameras around everywhere is like inherently bad. Because a lot of really, really good things have happened due to the prevalence of that tech. But, you know, it's all in human hands, and, you know, we screw it up a lot of the time. And in the same kind of ways over and over in these really insidious ways. And yeah, I think Kawasawa is doing that. And then in a more like overt way, Rui Nikaido, or Nikaido rather, sorry, is also kind of doing that. I was very surprised at some stuff that happened with Rui in these episodes. So let me tell you.
Yeah. There's a grey line in a lot of what happens in Odd Tax between what is considered crime that the populace cares about versus the very real and serious crimes and exploitation that's going on right under their noses that everyone seems comfortable with. They're just going to sweep under the rug.
Yeah.
But we're going to get back to that later.
Yeah. Totally.
Okay. Next question from Rackham. In what ways do you feel the show addresses the way technology has changed and or impacted the current generational divide and how older people feel and try to resist or adapt to it? That's a big one. I know that Dobu seems to be struggling with technology because he's never he's got a lynch mob on him that he can't see, and he seems to struggle with that fact.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe gosh, I can't think of his name. One of the boar of the Shibagaki.
Yes, that's the guy.
Maybe Shibagaki is kind of an example because he seems to be a character who is very much like the old days, you know, the comedians, they're they're all wanting to not hurt people's feelings, and that doesn't really make people laugh. And he doesn't really seem to be too invested with tech, whereas Baba, his partner, is getting a lot more traction in his career. And I don't know if it's necessarily because of networking stuff, but
that being said, I can point to one other example of a character who has been affected by technology in a horrendously negative way. Kakihana. Yes.
Yeah. Oh.
Can we just pour one out for poor Kakihana here, because I felt so awful for him throughout all of this.
I know, this is horrible. Like, it's
horrendous. I mean, had it turned just to put this in context again, because it's the second stream, Kakihana, like we discussed last time, I mentioned hey, maybe Shiho's genuine, you know, who knows? We'll see what turns out. And no, she's the worst kind of, con woman.
Yeah.
Working under the guy who runs her band, basically to catfish people for their money.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunately, well, I say unfortunately, quote unquote, but Kakihana, he had no money and he pretended he did. So it's a compounding problem on problem here, because Robin Hood it all you want, it's still not good for her to be stealing from the rich, I would argue. All that being said, I did watch Hustlers recently, the J-Lo film that was about stealing from the rich, and I quite enjoyed that. So maybe I'm talking as a hypocrite here. Anyway, point being, Kakihana is then actually taken to a warehouse and has the shit beaten out of him by a new character, although referenced before, Yano.
Right.
And is essentially just having, just being tortured for, as bait, basically, in a long-winded scheme to bring out, what was his name again? The skunk guy, Imai. There we go. To get his $1 billion lottery ticket. I mean, when was the last time that we saw a lottery ticket having this much value? I think in anime was in Tokyo Godfathers.
Oh, yeah. It's been a while.
By which I mean narrative value. I don't know how much the lottery ticket win was in Tokyo Godfathers off the top of my head. I'm sure someone could tell me. But anyway, here's the thing, right? Kakihana is about the same age as Odokawa, if not similar or close. And Odokawa is in his 40s, his early 40s. And he has decided to go on social media and dating sites to find himself someone to love. And I can't help but wonder, like, the comparison between him and Imai, because Imai has an affection for Rui, but it's not the same as Kakai's, even though they are there's like the members of the same band. You know, um, there is, I think, a distinction here between the relative savviness. I say relative savviness here, of old versus new, old versus young, rather. I mean to say. But yeah, Kakihana, like, he didn't seem to recognize or understand the possibility that everything presented to him on that profile was a facade. It was
Couldn't
fake.
even
It was
imagine
fiction.
it.
Even though one must know he himself was faking it.
Yep.
Like, he had the horse blinders on. He was unaware that his own duplicity could be in other people.
Yep.
Which is fucking Shakespearean almost, I must say.
He made a series of increasingly like bad choices. And you know, I don't think he deserved what happened to him or anything, but the consequences came calling and they were rough.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's Odd Taxi's way of pointing out that maybe people who are older are more susceptible to online duplicity. Although that being said, one must then also consider how many people are being duped by Kabasawa's bullshit, because he offers no evidence. Like, his videos are entirely sensationalist nonsense. Like, he has pictures of Dobu walking the street, unless he was fucking jaywalking, and I don't even know if that's a crime in Japan or not. I don't think that's, like, evidence enough. Like, you need actual concrete proof of what he's doing. Although, then again, I should also note that Kabasawa at the very end of episode, like, or near the end of episode 8, accuses one of his own followers of writing him out, when actually it was Odakawa who was there, like, with Dobu, so...
Yeah, and, you know, it seems like that younger people, like college-age students, are the people that are getting sort of wise to Taichi's game. You know, they're the ones who are like, well, he's just a coward. Around here, he doesn't really have a lot of truck with us. So, yeah, maybe that's more evidence as well. What Rackham is getting at.
Absolutely, but yeah, I think it goes to show, like, that younger people like Kabasawa can exploit social media. Older people like Kakiana are exploited by it. And you know what's funny? Look at, like, all the trends we see of, like, disinformation, people who believe, again, jokes I made, that horse dewormer is a COVID cure. I'm willing to bet you that the correlation between people most likely to believe it and age is a linear upwards trend.
It is, but I don't know if this is like a thesis of the show, right? Because you have, you know, Shun Imai, a young person who drastically has really stepped in it when it comes to tech. I mean, he has stepped in a giant bear trap just by, like, I mean, maybe there's different ways that you can misunderstand or mishandle tech. You know, like you were talking about Nobu, who kind of, or sorry, Dobu, doesn't just kind of doesn't get it, or Shibagaki. Then you have people that do get it, but they just kind of don't, like like they really don't apprehend the gravity or enormity of what can happen. Like, they don't really say, oh, it's just online, like, it's just my buddies. But, like, you know, the fucking lottery pictures we talked about is gonna drastically affect his life. You know, then you have, you know, someone who we didn't really check in so much on in this set of episodes, Tanaka Hajime, like, totally boned by by tech, and it's really
destroyed it.
Gacha games, eBay, like, really. Yeah, I mean, his life was not necessarily great apart from that, but, like, they're really dragging him down to, like, rock bottom. So
you know, maybe you're absolutely right there in that perhaps one should make broad statements sometimes about the show's like, assertions, because, I mean, sorry, like, you know, as you rightly point out, like, small detail I liked, he's wearing a skull mask. He is literally just dying. Like he looks like he's decaying, he's rotting away. Like how he looks physically is, of course, a visual metaphor for who he is as a person at this point. If this were a different kind of show that was more fantastical, he'd probably be a zombie. But that's the kind of thing he's getting at there, where it's a metaphor for his inner soul, basically, that he is decayed and rotted.
Mm-hmm.
A lesser show would have outright dropped the term red pill or black pill at this point for him.
Right.
You know I'm
It's
right,
true.
but I'm glad that Odd Taxi didn't, of course, because that would have been too on the nose. So maybe to answer Rackham's point here, maybe it isn't as simple as that. Maybe technology like distorts people based on age in different ways, but the
Mm-hmm.
ways can be very nuanced and not necessarily down to broad strokes. I mean, it would be one thing for me to point out that Kabasawa ignores all context and nuance in this show, or the events of the show, and then for me to try and make broad stroke assertions about it.
Uh,
And I don't think Odd Taxi falls into that trap. I think it's actually better than that in that it
yeah.
defies easy, like broad stroke analysis, which, hey, fair fucking play to it. Who am I to argue with that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's making like an ageist assertion or anything like that. It's like,
No.
yeah, it's just tech. It can really like people can use it to hurt and do use it to hurt other people of all stripes. And we can misunderstand or misuse it, or we ourselves can hurt other people by not fully grasping what we're doing. You know, no matter
Yeah.
how like adept we are with its use, or no matter how integrated it is into our lives. And you know, I just want to echo something you said earlier. I just feel so bad for Kakihana. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I know he did make some poor choices. You know, he's no angel, as they say. But like, man, I mean, he just really like. I feel like his poor choices, like it's when I look at him and what led up to it, and kind of the way his life has gone, it's hard for me to be too mad at him. You know what I mean? Like he's like in his mid 40s and is really poor, has no prospects. Like he just, you know, a little white lie because he wants like to connect with someone and
Yeah.
have some romance in his life and everything. And you know, he that keeps escalating, and he
Yeah.
just makes some really stupid decisions. But like, God, I mean, there are these characters that throughout the show are making really bad decisions that are intentionally about hurting other people, and they haven't been
Yeah.
brutalized as much as Kakihana. So I just feel so bad
Yeah.
for
I
him.
mean, for Kathiana, it started with a burning pot roasted in the oven. It ended in Aurora Borealis. So there you
Right,
go.
right.
But I also want to give the show real credit here with its portrayal of Kakiana's situation. Because again, without being didactic, it doesn't, for example, give us any of his inner monologues where, like, you know, he would be thinking, like, I've made so many mistakes, and invites us to, in a very, like, open, like, honest, how to put it, like, very blunt way, to feel sympathetic for him. Like, it doesn't do that, but nor does it belittle him.
Hmm.
He goes through awful stuff in the show, don't get me wrong. I mean, and I'm not just talking about the fact that he gets the shit kicked out of him in a warehouse because he lied about, like, how much money he had. I'm talking about the fact that he is desperately trying to, like, you know, acclimatize himself to upper class society that he has no understanding of, like, oh, you know, how do I get my wine refilled? Or when
No.
or even the sound design of when he's cutting up his food and it's just making that awful scraping noise that sounds like nails on a chalkboard. Like,
Man,
that's
it's
happening. That's
oh
happening. But like, we never are meant, never feel like we should mock him or belittle him.
no.
We feel sympathy for him. And I must again stress that this all comes from the root of feeling like he has to present himself as being wealthier than he is,
Hmm.
because that's a part of like what's codified into his dating profile, and amongst other things like that. That's why he spent so much time like saying, "Oh, I'm actually over 300,000 a year." There we go. Off we go.
Yeah.
Bye, bye, bye.
I hope things turn out well
Okay.
for him. I have some
Yeah.
hope that, I mean, because people's circumstances change pretty drastically in this show from episode to
Mm.
episode. So I'm really hopeful that, you know, through some absurd turn of events, that, you know, he's put on a good path to end the show. But like, I
Yeah,
mean, when he had to call his mom, I mean, that was some brutal shit.
that was awful.
God. Just want to be like,
Yeah.
Yamamoto, you dick. Yano,
Oh
you
man.
piece of garbage.
God damn it. Ah, okay, we'll move. Do you have anything else to add to those questions,
Nope.
Doc, before we move on? Okay,
Mhm.
so thank you for those questions, Rackham.
Mhm.
Next pair comes from Re_Ku or Riku. Again, not the Riku from Final Fantasy X, just to be clear. The first question: how are the police presented in Odd Taxi up to this point, and what might this contribute to its portrayal or portrait of crime and society? All right. First thing off the bat, I want to point out is this. It would be naive of me to not acknowledge in recent years how we, as a society, as a world, as a community, like all that sort of thing, have seen critiques of the police as systemic failures, like systemic racism in police. I mean, that's been going on in the UK since 1990s.
Mhm.
When I say that, I don't mean to say that systemic racism started in the 1990s, but rather it was more openly acknowledged through things
Right.
like the McPherson report when Stephen Lawrence was murdered. But I think that with the best will in the world, Odd Taxi doesn't want to be a systemic critique of the police. It
Hmm.
doesn't want to say ACAB. It doesn't want to say that. It doesn't want to, do that kind of stuff. If anything, it reminds me a lot of, in its portrayal of police, of Sarazanmai, where the systems surrounding the
Right.
police are what corrupted Reo and Mabu in that case, and they did so here with one of the two Diamond brothers, the older one. And I think this is actually a really nice part of how it presents these characters as animals, which is something I'm going to get into separately because these episodes finally tip their hand, I think, into why the characters are animals from a narrative sense rather than just an aesthetic choice.
Mhm.
But the Daimon characters. Now, this is the point where I expose my real ignorance here. I don't know offhand what exact animal they're meant to be. Is it raccoon? I'm not sure.
Oh, I thought they were dogs.
Dogs, raccoons,
Let me look.
whatever.
I'll see if the no, it just says it just says older brother, younger brother. I thought the dogs with the bandit mask faces. Maybe they're not panda bears because they're skinny.
They're Beethoofs from Pokemon. There we go.
Yes.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? What it ultimately actually, in this case, doesn't fully enough matter what species they are, but rather that they are, as presented in the show, the same species, these two bros. In fact, they looked almost exactly alike, save for the fact that one wears glasses and the other one does not. Rackham has confirmed they are meerkats, which I'm entirely okay with. That actually makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense, actually, now that I think about it, for a police unit.
Well, if one of them takes off their cop hat and they have like a red tuft, then we'll know.
Yeah, I mean, good thing they didn't take up a life of crime. They'd already have the domino mask, so wouldn't
That's
they?
right. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, it does ultimately the actual species they are isn't important, but the fact that they are both the same species and indeed the brothers who look practically identical, save for that, is what is important. They even have very similar names. They are about as same in origin as one can get. They might even well be twins. I think they might actually be twins. Yeah. So they came from the same origin point, but ultimately diverged in different directions. Where the older brother became a corrupted cop. He took bribes, like he's working with Dobu. He's working with Yano's gang. He's on the take. Whereas the younger Daimon is not. He's idealistic, but he can't believe what his older brother is doing. And so I think this goes to show that in this particular story, that the way in which police become corrupt is not necessarily a thing, because if it were, it would have happened to both of them, given they came through basically the same. They are functionally the same person up until a point. But rather that I think, as happens with a lot of the characters in the show, very specific circumstances came to them that changed their behavior for better or worse. Like someone approached like the elder Daimon brother at some point and was like, "Hey, would you do me a favor and just look the other way for this one traffic violation?" And then you can see how things blossom out from there. Whereas the other one, remained idealistic. And so Odd Taxi, in my opinion, rather than being a systemic critique of police brutality, as we see in real life where people criticize that, or indeed in other shows, it instead shows that, like, the things that like distort the police are outside influences of criminality and all that, and ultimately money and capitalism. That's what it boils down to, isn't it?
Yeah, I think to fully answer this question, I'm gonna need to wait for the other shoe to drop
Yeah.
with Kenshiro Daimon, the older brother, and really kind of
Mm.
see what's going on, like what's making him tick. Like why is he doing the things that he's doing? I mean, it wouldn't shock me if like he's still sort of like, has noble ideals, but he's made compromises, like because he's like, oh, it's in service of the greater good or whatever. Um, I mean, I do agree with you that it seems like at this point, the show is not really taking aim at institutions,
Mm.
at least not like really going both barrels. Um, it seems to be interested in the human stories of these two guys who are cops. And yeah, I just am really curious about the older brother and kind of why he is behaving the way he is. Like why is he now crooked? What is going on there? And I think that like these two characters are just are presented as very much individuals, like very much like these are just two guys, and they're not a lot different in a lot of ways from other people in the show. Like, I mean, um gosh, what is her name? Main alpaca lady, Shirakawa.
Shirakawa.
She's someone who like had a very like she was like a pure person or whatever, just kind of doing her thing. And she made some bad choices and has made some compromises, and now she's like a low level drug dealer
Mm-hmm.
in the same way. And so like I think to get at Riku's question about like how the portrayal of these two police officers is meant to talk about the show's portrait of crime and society. I mean, I think maybe the idea is that like, all of us could, anybody could fall victim to it, like could fall into this, because, hardships happen in our lives, and, we're against the wall, and then, we make compromises, and before you know it, we're taking out loans to take out the girl of our dreams
Yeah.
to a
I
fancier
mean,
restaurant than we could ever afford.
absolutely. I mean, so much of Odd Taxi is focused around the pursuit of money, and if not money, through what I'm going to describe as value. And that could be either economic, fiscal value, as in money, or it can be like social acceptance that has its own value. Um, and I suppose, like, for the Elder Daimon, it could be as simple as, well, I'm going to structurally or implicitly through my role defend trickle down economics. But then he looks up and realizes, hey, all this trickle down's coming to me. This ain't fucking right. So there you go. Like, and maybe like we can't necessarily preclude our taxi having a systemic critique of our society, because I suppose like maybe it just really is all capitalism is shit and it just drives everyone to do this sort of thing. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. I mean, definitely shows like there's nothing sacred about the institution of the police, and they certainly don't have any moral authority
mhm.
or anything like that. I mean, they're and then the one of them that is idealistic is, he's wearing glasses because he's too short-sighted to see that the
Nice,
he's too
nice.
short-sighted to see that like the like a real kind of uh criminal element like chewing at the
Or,
underbelly of our fair society is right there next to
or,
him.
you're right. Or alternatively, they could be like the glasses from They Live.
Oh. Yes. Yes. So
Yeah.
which one of them is Roddy Piper and which one of them
And,
is
and if you
Keith
think
David?
if you would be silly with like this joke about the way the younger Diamond brother sees the world, now he sees other people, just bear in mind when we talk about Odakawa in a bit.
Right. Right.
Like, the show's already made it clear that, like, the way in which people view the world and view other people is very important. Just you wait and
Yeah.
see. Oh
I
boy.
I do think what you're saying is very right, that like money makes the world go round. And I mean, it's the reason that everyone it's what it all ultimately comes back to. I mean, why
Yeah.
Shirakawa's in trouble, why Kakihana's in trouble, what is motivating Dobu, what is motivating Yano, the idol industry. Um, maybe not so much Taichi, but you could argue that, like, I don't know, they're sort of analogous, the fame and money thing,
Yeah.
and that they go
It
hand in
also
hand. So
it also then fits that the protagonist is the character least concerned with money in the entire show. Odakawa. He's a taxi driver. He can't be
Mhm.
making that much money, but nor is he's, you know, like short in desperate need of it for anything. It's never a concern with him beyond just, hey, that's my fare. Thank you very much. And there you go.
yeah, yeah. Although Tanaka's never really been concerned with it either. Um,
Well, no, he wasn't concerned with it, but he's still devoured so much
but
of his
it
life and money through that.
yep, that's true.
Still
Especially his
applies him.
childhood. Yeah,
I mean, the credit card.
that's what I mean. Yeah. Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Shit, dog. Right. So, do you have anything else to add to that question?
I don't think so.
Okay. Next one then. What do you think of Yano? Why does he rap? What is doing or making it possible? Okay. My immediate reaction to it is this.
So can I
I
just I think
go on.
we should reread the last part of the question, because it's not so. And I find this incredibly fascinating. What is the rap doing in the context of the show, like as literature or as
Oh,
text? Like, what is that mode of communication? Like, what is it making possible in the story?
yes,
Or,
you're
yeah,
absolutely
I
right.
find this really fascinating.
Well, I've got my thought, but I'll let you actually
No, no,
answer
no, no.
first, Doc.
I haven't thought about this at all. I mean, I have no idea. I hadn't really that thought about it that deeply. I just sort of was like, oh, this is a fun aesthetic choice. You know what I mean? This is like a thing where, he's like, I don't know, he's this cool character that looks like he's a gangster from like a Korean film. Um, but I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know why. I don't know why the rapping. Why do you think the rapping?
Okay. Let's put it this way. Every character, to some degree or another, in Odd Taxi is performing.
Okay.
They are presenting a version of themselves that is either exaggerated, it's histrionics, or it's, entirely performative. Kawasawa fits in that bill, for example.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Rui. Yeah.
therefore, why would we think that Yano is any exception? Even I think this speaks to the nature of like how human beings present themselves. Human beings, I'm not saying that as a mistake, by the way, but rather, and also their need to it, in that for everyone in the show, to some extent or another, they must present a version of themselves that is not entirely in tandem with who they are authentically. And even for Yano, the mob boss, who he has to maintain a semblance of power and control
Mm-hmm.
and a mystique, even if you
Right.
want to call it that.
Sure.
And that's what the rapping is doing. The rap, beyond just being a quirky way of having him exist as a character for our amusement, is a continuation of that idea that is about continual need to perform and present to other people for an intended effect.
I. That's perfect. I think that makes perfect sense.
Cool. All right, that's it. Pack it up. Let's go home.
Well, I think more so. There's a very general question for what do you think of Yano?
What do I think of it? Oh,
Yeah. What
um,
what do you think of
well,
Yano?
well,
I'll just say it like you know, he's a scumbag. He's a entertaining scumbag because he's rapping all the time. Um, and I don't know. There hasn't been really too much beyond that, I feel. So I like him. I think he fits the tone and texture and mood of the story very well. So what about you?
Well, the only thing I'll add to that is that also the rap is a disarming element. Our introduction to Yano is when he crashes into Odakawa in the street and he is
Yes.
on the scooter. And so our impression is this is some random, he's just a regular guy. Okay, or regular as in like, he's more towards the norm than not, beyond the quirk of him rapping. Maybe, I mean, we've seen so many different performers at this point, the comedy duo, the
Yes.
idols, that we can maybe just think that this is part of the show's clique, that he himself is perhaps a wannabe performer or rap artist, you
Mm,
know?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so it's disarming. That's our first intro. And then when we see him in the warehouse with poor Kakiana later, that rap changes from a likable quirk to a malicious method of expression.
Very
The
ominous.
we have our setup, but then we have our subversion,
Yeah.
where the exact same words or the exact same style of communication was employed before that we thought was, oh, it's a little guy, it's a bit weird, he just crashed into a guy in the street, whatever.
Yeah.
And then
Charming.
he's using it, he's using it as his prelude to beating the shit out of Kakiana. Like that's another part of what I think is really chilling about him, in that it's a disarming way of introducing himself to us, and probably to people, like people, it maybe invites people to take him too lightly. This again ties into the idea of performance. It might not necessarily be to make him seem bigger or stronger than he is, but rather the opposite. I mean, do you want me to bring up Joe Pesci from Goodfellas at this point?
Think I'm funny?
Yeah,
Think I'm
exactly.
funny?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jokes I mind.
Wanna
That's
make
what
you laugh? God.
I mean, he is a
Right.
tiny man, so
Mhm.
it maybe will be that he is just Joe Pesci. I'd be okay, with him voicing him. I mean, admittedly, if you think I'm joking here with this comparison, I'd like to point out that Joe Pesci has done a rap album.
That can't be true.
No, I'm not kidding. Look up Joe
I'm doing it.
Pesci Wise Guys on YouTube. Just do it right now.
I'm just
In fact,
Googling it.
you could do that. Tell you what, Doc, improvised moment here, because I need to sit to the bathroom. I'm going to let you do that. Listen to this and give your reaction on the air while I nip away for 2 minutes. How's that sound?
Sure.
Go on, have a listen to Wise Guys by
right.
Joe Pesci.
I'm not going to listen to it. I'm going to pull up the lyrics on Genius, and I'm going to look at some questions here.
Okay, you do that. I'll be back shortly.
Did Joe Pesci actually rap? People ask. The Oscar-winning actor released a gangster rap album in 1998. 1998's Lethal Weapon 4 was the end of Pesci's ongoing movie career. At 55 years old, the actor tried his hand at hip-hop. Even more bizarrely, he performs as, so he has a stage name, Vincent LaGuardia Gambini, the character he played not in Goodfellas, but in the 1992 hit comedy My Cousin Vinny. And not only does he have a rap album, it appears he has 3 albums to his name. One of them, of course, is hip hop. The newest one is from 2019. And it's called Still Singing, and it's a jazz album. But Vincent LaGuardia Gambini sings Just For You. But he also has the track Wise Guy that Shadon was referring to. I don't know if I should read these lyrics or not, because they are terrible.
I'm back. Go on, do tell.
Well, so Wise Guys is one of the tracks from his album under the performance, the stage name Vincent LaGuardia Gambini. However, did you know he also has a 2019 album that's jazz? Yeah. So he realized the hip hop was not for him.
Holy shit! I did not know that. That's insane.
All right.
I mean, I didn't realize that I was gonna, have like my attack turned back on me, JoJo style here. But here we are. So that being said, though, Doc, you have now had it confirmed that Joe Pesci did a
Oh
rap
yeah.
album. Therefore,
I mean,
my Yano comparison is spot on.
I'm gonna read the chorus since you've brought this up. And now that you're back, I'm gonna read the chorus
Oh, do it.
of the song "Wise Guy." I'm a wise guy. I'm a wise guy. Lovely day in the neighborhood. Lovely day in the neighborhood for a drive-by. It's the bitches that'll get yas. For a drive-by. Lovely day in the neighborhood. Lovely day in the neighborhood. For a drive-by. It's the bitches that'll get yas. For a drive-by.
Before I start crying here, I just want to point out that if we are going to end second stream soon, we could have not ended it on a better note than you reading out those lyrics.
Oh. They have done something wrong.
Oh shit. All right. Do you want anything more to Riku's question before we move away from that and leave Joe Pesci behind forever?
The only thing I want to say is that I feel like this question implies that Riku has their own thoughts, and I want to know what those are because I think it's an incredibly fascinating question, and I want to know if they have more to add than we have presented. So I'd be very curious.
Play. Right then. That brings us to the end of our Patreon questions. So thank you very much everyone who contributed. Thank you to Riku and Rackham. If you are a patron of ours, do feel free to ask questions for the final episode.
Sounds like a tag team, a wrestling tag team duo, Riku and Rackham.
Well, I mean, they were some good follow-up questions there. They knocked me for 6. Right, with that said, we'll move on to talking points. And I actually don't have many that we haven't already covered, but I will just start with a small thing here. In this show, like, it can be difficult at times, I think, to feel when people are necessarily being genuine to other characters, and that's part of its design. But we also need to speak about music for a little bit, because there's a scene in which Odakawa and Shirakawa meet in the park and discuss, like, basically the revelation is doled out that she was with Dobu for a time, and that she was dependent on him financially to the point where she is now in massive debt, and he is perhaps or has categorically been violent towards her, all this sort of stuff. And Odakawa is rightly like, well, you basically came onto me for, reasons, like for these surreptitious reasons.
Your boyfriend wanted to use me as a getaway driver.
Yeah. So off you go. If there's one thing you can prescribe yourself in the pharmacy, it's a maximum strength dose of fuck yourself. Yeah. Like, that's what he said, basically, in no uncertain terms. Yeah. Now, she's explaining, like, her feelings to him and the fact that she does genuinely love him. And
do you believe that?
Well, this is the point I'm getting to. Okay. Listen to the music that's happening during this. Very sentimental sounding piano piece. Mm-hmm. And if there's one thing that Tentacruel has taught me on YouTube is that you've got to pay attention to music, like, as far as mood setting goes. And to me, it made me think that she is probably being genuine to him, because if there's one thing I can say about this show is that it does point out various times in which characters do try to be authentic, for better or for worse. There is, for example, the donkey pair, of the donkey of the ass of the comedian group, unfortunately, and his time with Rui, which seems pretty pretty above board. For what it's worth.
Baba, right. Yes.
Yeah. And then there's also Yano's like the manager of Mystery Kiss, whose name eludes me.
Yamamoto.
Yamamoto.
Big,
like he starts.
Is he a dog also? What is he? Fuyuki Yamamoto. He's a large. He definitely looks canine. He looks
he's a jackal.
Maybe
a jackal, if I had to guess.
Sure. A coyote.
But anyway,
yeah, that's one of those. A canine of some description.
Yeah, but. Like he says, for example, in the scene in which the Ice Gems mascot is there, whatever his name is, Mr. Polar Bear himself. He's like, hey, Mystery Kiss are doing great. Like, I need more time to get. So, like, he's actually speaking about the fact that they are genuinely successful at this point. Not that they are successful as the racketeering, like exploitative, body
Mm-hmm.
track situation that they are, but rather that they are successful as a band.
Oh
And
wait, I
he's like,
misspoke. I misspoke. Sorry, it's not Fukumoto. It's Sekaguchi.
Mm,
Polar bear. I was looking at a panda, but you're right. It is a polar bear. My bad.
mm. So the basically the show does show characters being authentic. It's not so like depressing or nihilistic that there can be no authentic, genuine moments between characters. And I think this is one of those examples, and it uses the music to enforce that with us, where like Odakawa has his own, like perspective, which I think, given his like inner thoughts, is reasonable. I don't blame him for feeling that way. We're in issues. I'd probably, as I say, be a lot more scornful of Shirakawa. Um, but the music says to us that, like, in terms of who we should believe in this scene, we should believe her. And I just wanted to point that out because I think like it's a little detail that I appreciate, like to help some me. Like sometimes music can be overly didactic, I think, as you've said before, like, or it can just, be too like
This is
Tantakruel
how you
said,
should
like,
feel.
yeah,
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
this way, dun dun
yeah.
dun dun dun. But like I think this works like to help sell in this case because there is a place I think for a lot of ambiguity in the show, but not so much where we can't get a concrete feeling of someone's like, thoughts and emotions. And so I
Yeah.
do think she genuinely does care for him, even though it came originally from a place of cynicism and exploitation.
I'm just gonna take a victory lap because I knew it. I knew even in those first episodes, I was like, "There's a connection here." Even if they did not, even if it didn't begin that way, I just felt that they made a real connection. The one thing that gives me pause is her feelings seem to have escalated quite quickly. Because she doesn't, and this could just be a localization translation issue, but maybe it's not an issue. I don't know. But after her confession to him, when she kind of lays out the truth about herself and why she approached him and what she's going to do, she says she's going to tell the truth and turn herself in, so to speak, to Goriki. And she says, not because I have feelings for you or I care about you, or because I love you. And that seems like a lot for her to feel based on the limited amount of time they've been together. I could be wrong. Again, this could be just a subtitling thing or some kind of language thing where there's a different shade of meaning, which doesn't mean it the way that I would mean it if I said that or something. But it felt like, okay, you're coming on a little strong there, a little bit too strong.
Well, I do hear you on that, but I would also like to point out that you could take any pair of characters in this show and probably contrast them to each other in some way or another. And so if you think about it, like, if we take her like declaration of love, despite such a short amount, you know where I'm going, in such a short amount of time as true, could we also then see that as a contrast to the way Shiho treats Kakiana, in that hers was completely facile? There are some people who will confess love very quickly to you because they are going to exploit you, they're going to steal from you, they're going to demean you. And there are some people who will express their love to you very quickly because, despite how convention might make it out to be too quick, and there are certainly times to say when that's true, that sometimes people do fall in love very quickly, and it is perfectly fine.
Yeah, I know it's totally fair. It's totally fair. It just, in this particular context where she's been exposed as kind of a fraud, I have my guard up a little bit. I hope that it does work out. I mean, I believe her. I think I'm leaning toward that.
I mean, the only person I want to find someone by the end of the show at this point is Kakiana. Poor fucking dude just needs a fucking break. Doesn't he need to be anything like other than just a promise of like, hey, let's go get a coffee sometime.
Yeah.
Someone who actually gives a shit about him. Oh, Christ.
I know.
Anyway, that's my talking point on music done in that particular scene. Over to you, Doc. Anything to add?
Well, there's a very disturbing scene I want to talk about from the beginning of episode 5, when Odokawa is picking up Yamamoto, and they stop to get the first client, the first member of the idol group. It's a young cat, and she's just casually eating fried chicken. And that seems, in the context of the show, when everyone's an animal, that just seems fucking heinous.
Well, now. I agree with you, but this is
Was not ready for the explicit mention of fried chicken.
This
And Kakiana, of course, is cutting his steak and everything, but this was just like, that was later after the initial shock.
Well, this is the perfect segue then onto my point about Odokawa and how he sees the world. Get ready here.
I'm ready.
None of the people in the show are actually animals, they are human beings.
Okay.
Right, let me go through my...
This is a galaxy brain theory.
Let me go through my evidence. So, first off, there's been a couple of times in which there have been lines said by Odokawa about, for example, how he sees Goriki as a gorilla, for example, things like that. But then we also need to consider Odokawa's ability to recognize people, despite wearing masks, versus when they do. Because I also need to then point out something else, which is, let's go back to like Taichi looking at the video of Tanaka shooting up the club. Now, if these characters were animals, and we've seen Dobu wearing a mask in this, how the fuck, unless he was being willfully disingenuous, would he mistake that person for Dobu? Tanaka has a Tanaka has a blue-colored tail. You see that in the video.
Yeah, right. But Dobu's skin, or hair, I should say, is roughly the same color. Not like the red patches, but
he's got big teeth and bulbous cheeks and all that.
Yeah, it's covered up by the mask. I think we've seen how Dobu looks with the mask on, and it's hilarious because it provides him no disguise at all. But Taichi
but that's because he's got a big head. But he's got a big face on.
Yeah, he does. Taichi hasn't seen that, and he's not wearing a hood and stuff like that.
But he has seen photographs of what he looks like. So, okay, put that onto one side. Then also, how does he recognize Shirakawa from the rear, even though in theory there could be any alpaca in the world? Why her specifically?
Well, if she was a human, how would he recognize her in that way?
Well, I'll get back to that.
Okay.
But in turn, then how does he recognize Taichi when he's wearing a mask?
Because of the neck and the head, and the mask only covers like a tiny portion of his face.
Yep. There's that. There's that. But I want to put all this in context here, which is to say that Dobu and Odokawa spend a lot of time discussing how he has this particular ability to find people in crowds.
Yeah.
As long as they're not wearing masks.
Yeah.
And why is that? In addition, I should also note that Shirakawa and Goriki spend time talking about the fact that Odokawa clearly has some sort of neurological condition, possibly synesthesia.
Synesthesia, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my theory is that Odokawa sees the world and everyone in it as animals. And that's why he's able to single people out the way he does. But otherwise, everyone is a human being. I mean, there's even some on the nose referencing to that by the fact that the comedy troupe are called the Homo sapiens.
Right, but that's funny because they're animals.
Yeah, but then it turns out they might actually just very well be called Homo sapiens and be humans. My theory is that this explains Odokawa's ability to find people in crowds and all that, because he sees them very differently than everyone else.
That's an interesting theory.
That's why also he says Calico Cat specifically, and when he says that, the manager, whatever his name is, says, "What are you talking about? If she was actually a Calico Cat, just anthropomorphized, would he not have just ignored that comment?"
Well, I mean, he's just talking under his breath, and he's like, "Why are you talking about a Calico Cat?" I don't know. I hope this isn't true. It will be disappointing if the wonderful aesthetic and character of the show is is not
You,
doesn't
you,
happen to be
you
true.
cannot.
Yeah,
You can on chat saying this is like the Purgatory games,
right.
sorry, Girls' Last Tour theory. And
Yes.
I'm like, I'm all in for crazy theories like
Yeah,
this.
yeah. It is
Um,
definitely a galaxy brainer.
I mean, I got a big forehead. What can I say? Um, but yeah, I that's my feeling on this because I think they paid too much attention to these various bits here, these little things I point out, for it not to be either that the animal thing is something that people don't actively comment on, which is strange, or when they do comment, like the Calico cat thing, it's like only Odokawa that does it and never anyone else.
Well, how'd that explain scenes in which Otokawa is not present? That
This I
there's
did
still
consider.
other animals.
This
Yeah,
this I did consider, and I think the reason that if this is if my theory is true, I think the reason they've had to do this is otherwise it would give the game away way too early. So it's more a
sure,
function of necessity than otherwise.
sure.
Unless this entire thing gets like an episode 13 closing or where, and that was my story, and then he's just like recounting everything that he's heard or been told,
Hmm.
and in which case it is still framed for his lens. You're not wrong to point that out, and it does weaken a little bit that they've had to compensate for that if that is true. But hey, I mean, I bring this up
It's
because
interesting.
there are shows also like Beastars, for example, and even BNA, where the anthropomorphism is a key part of like how
Hmm.
characters act. It influences their behavior,
Yeah.
it influences like their society,
Hmm.
and for Odd Taxi, like in all ways, it is basically our world as we know it, just with anthropomorphized people, and no one brings it up, save for Odokawa. He's the only
Right.
person who ever mentions other people in terms of looking like animals. Goriki is a gorilla. She, whatever her name is a calico cat. No one
Right.
else does.
Right. The director has said in an interview that it was like a tonal choice, but I mean, you wouldn't want to spoil that for people. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that's not necessarily a winning argument against your theory or anything. That's very interesting. Um, we will, I guess, see if it comes true. I hope it doesn't.
No,
But it is,
I know.
but it is really intriguing, like kind of as a possibility, because here right at the end of the block of episodes we covered, and they've really leaned into exploring Otokawa's brain and the things that could be going on there.
They've
And
literally
like,
got
why are they doing
photographs of
that?
it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's very curious. So
Mm-hmm.
we
All
shall
right.
see.
Do you have any more talking points, Doc?
Oh, so I did the fried chicken one. So Rui Nikaido, what a character. I mean, she is. We don't really get to see her in her leather jacket and stuff this episode, but she's a fascinating one. We find out that she does have, I guess, a boyfriend or a love interest in Baba, who is not you or me, but is in fact Atsuya Baba, the donkey. And of course, she can't reveal that, because she's an idol. And part of kind of manipulating or it being seen as like pure to your fan base is, you keep relationships under wraps. So she's got that going on. She also appears to know something about like Yano's involvement with their group. And I mean, she's like in the know about the Shiho Ichimura, the calico cat you spoke of, doing the online entrapment.
I don't want to be a badger doing badger games anymore.
Yeah. And she's just like, oh, so like, like she's there for that comment. So, and she knows
He's the
like
most mask off person in the group.
it's wild. Like that. I don't know. I just never would have thought like going in, right? like these sort of stories, I'm used to the managers being, the shadowy figures behind the scenes, of course, and doing all kinds of nefarious bads.
Skullduggery.
Yeah, skullduggery. But man, she's just like in on it. Like she knows, like she's trying to, much like she's chasing fame like Tai Chi, but like she's like actively hurting people and like willing to go outside, like out of the bounds of legality and decency and everything to achieve whatever it is that she wants. And I mean, she's so interesting because I would never have thought like, I mean, from the very first of the show, like, we see her as an idol, and then immediately we're hit with like, she's not who she appears to be. And it's like, we keep getting that more and more, like, oh, she's really not who she appears to be. Like she's like involved directly, or at least she knows about like the criminal nature of what's going on.
Yeah. And the thing is, Rackham is saying, that Rui doesn't do the Badger games because people know who she is. But I then would put to you, what is the difference between her and Imai versus Shiho and Kakihana? I mean, one is more, I suppose, nakedly criminal than the other, but the fact is that she is still exploiting her fans for their wealth,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So is like, to what point do we go from one to the other? Should we look more harshly on her behavior than we would do in real life? Like the line between these two acts and how we feel about them morally and ethically is thin and nebulous when you put it in contrast. Yeah. And I think it also speaks to how Odd Taxi, even though I said it's not necessarily about systemic critiques, points out that at a certain level of criminality or in a certain way, some crimes, even though they are functionally equivalent, the transfer of wealth from one person to another against their will or without their informed consent, some are more acceptable or more tolerated than others when they really shouldn't be.
I know that's a good point. And I mean, as much as you say that the show is not a systemic critique, I think you did say this earlier too, that like sort of hanging above everything is like, in parentheses, capitalism, right?
Money.
It is.
Can we have the ending scene of the show being Odokawa beating up with the Monopoly Man? That'd be a thing. I'd be okay with that.
Yes.
I'd be alright with that. One other thing I want to point out, though, just also to go back to Shiho very briefly, is a small thing. She, and this again just could be me just like misinterpreting the detail here, but she mentions in one of the taxi rides that she takes with the manager and of course Odokawa, which Odokawa overhears, that she likes hot springs. That's the thing she says.
Yep.
And would you say, Doc, that we have any reason to disbelieve her in that particular scenario that she doesn't like hot springs? Would we think that? No, I think we can take that on face value because she's in an environment where she doesn't need to pretend to be someone she's not. So let's now just go over to the dinner scene between her and Kakihana, where she mentions that she likes baths.
Right.
And she mentions that she likes baths.
We got a genuine slice of her personality.
Yes. And this, I think, is really fascinating, and it makes me wonder what will happen with her later, because she lays out to Kakihana, like, I hated spending time with you. You lied to me about how much you had for money, like how much money you had. And make no mistake, she is right, even though she is complicit in the fact that he is now like in the awful situation he's in, both in terms of debt and being physically assaulted. But she is still right. But nonetheless, is what she's saying there, where she's telling him unequivocally, I think you're a moron, and I literally felt like I was suffocating when the time I spent with you. Is that entirely true, given that she said that thing that we have corroborating evidence for that is true and real and authentic?
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, that's...
Let me stroke my beard on that.
This is what I think you were gesturing at in the first set of episodes we did. It's that, like, you would like to see the truth come out, and you knew it was going to be ugly and everything, but maybe they'd end up with some kind of real connection. after all is said and done. So maybe that's still in the cards.
Everyone feels better after a hangover. That's all I say. Okay. The final talking point for me, and I want to just bring this up as a point of speculation, given that the next time we come back will be the final block of episodes.
The final.
Has Odokawa actually kidnapped someone?
I was just gonna ask, like, what
man,
that was I said, what is happening? Because like, in episode 7, when Daimon's about to open the door and gets buzzed away, I was just like, God damn it, no! I want to see what's in there.
Well,
certainly some people believe he's just talking to himself, and then you have other people believe he's really kidnapped this girl. So like, multiple theories are on the table in the text of the show.
Yeah. I honestly think that he hasn't.
Yeah.
But my evidence is not entirely rock solid. However, I will point to one thing. Tanaka visits Odokawa's place and puts some bullet holes in it as a warning. If it even was him, actually, because again, if the show has taught us anything, be careful, like, making assumptions. It could very well have been Dobu for all we know.
Yeah, like a frame up, yeah.
But anyway, to most of the point, he puts a bullet in one of his windows, which Odokawa then boards over with this tiny little beer mat-sized piece of wood. And he says... Is
it wood? Is it cardboard? He just tapes it up there.
And he says, there, you can't escape now. Now, unless Odokawa has kidnapped a fucking dragonfly...
Right.
And put it in a jar... Yeah. How the fuck is a regular human being-sized person going to sneak out a bullet hole? I didn't
even catch that line, to be honest with you. I saw him say "good girl," but I missed that part. Like, that's wild. Yeah. Does he have, like you said, like a pet, some kind of like pet thing that walruses traditionally eat? And he's like, "I'm ashamed because this is supposed to be my prey, but I love it."
Is it a firefly or some shit? I don't know. But like, I mean, if your response to that was, well, she could break the window, like, she could always do that.
Yes.
Like, we've heard nothing, no signs of life, not a damn thing.
I know.
And yeah, I'm not entirely convinced that there is someone behind there. Now, I could be wrong. I could be wrong even about what I just said. But like, that to me just screams to me like, there's something demented going on here. Unless he is literally so insane as to think that like any possible avenue of like it must be holistically sealed, and that counts as being secure. But I'm not entirely convinced that's the case, because Odokawa, unless he's some sort of American Psycho character, like, is so like rational as to live his day-to-day life in a way that's completely contrary to the likes of Taichi, for example, or whatever his name was.
Sure.
Sorry, Tanaka, I mean to say.
Right.
You know, where he's like gone completely psychopathic. Like, unless he's like, as I say, like, you know, one of those high-functioning serial killers or something, I don't know. I'm not entirely convinced that's that, as opposed to just the fact that he's got some sort of psychosis where he believes someone's there.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's going to be not exactly what Goriki said, because I think the show wants to surprise us. But also, yeah, I don't think it's a kidnapping, because, you know, you mentioned the music in the scene, the confession sheen from Shirakawa, from the alpaca, the confession. I think the music here in the scene you're speaking of, when Odokawa is fixing the hole in his window, is deliberately meant to mislead you. It's like sort of comic, like, because it's very sinister and like tense. But it's like, you know, to me, it felt like a part of the comedy. Like, you know, I mean, we don't really know, but like, I think we can kind of know he's not actually having like a kidnapped victim in his closet. It's clearly something else is going on. Now, what is just very, who can say? But yeah, I know I'm fascinated by this. Like, what is happening here? Very interesting.
Evidence to me leans to not. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, if the final like 5 seconds of Odd Taxi is him just opening that cupboard and saying "off you go," and then there's just like this emaciated little girl coming out, I think I'll just literally just throw my monitor out my window. We're like, what? Fuck no! What the fuck? I'll be like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is the end of my talking points. Do you have anything else you wish to add, Doc?
Just we'll bring up that, you know, we haven't talked about him at all, but in this set of episodes, we do get introduced to Nagashima, Satoshi, the giraffe,
Oh yes.
who like has been, I guess, kind of like aggressively corresponding with or hate mailing the Homo sapiens
I
throughout.
mean, he kept sticking his neck out.
Yeah, yes, with a lot of criticism, and so he doesn't in the latest episode when they're having their radio show. He doesn't write in, but like he shows up at the radio station, but he does not get to introduce himself to Shibagaki. But he knows who Shibagaki and Baba are by appearance, but they don't know him. This could be another like, like, oh, technology, it allows some shit to happen kind of thing. But it's interesting because like we see Nagashima looking totally insane in the first shot. I mean, looks like he hasn't slept for about a month. And then once he is sort of out of the presence of Shibagaki, he looks a lot more normal. Which was interesting.
His presence in this show, even brief though it has been thus far, is to remind us that, much as it is with Taichi, for example, that all of the things we like do online, like there are people out there it can affect. And you might say, well, he's not online on the radio, but the point is still the same. It is still, as I've said before, a parasocial relationship.
Yeah.
And when you fire back thinking there's no one, like there's an ephemeral sense of someone else on the other end, like it's a person who radioed in, so fucking what? No, they are a real flesh and blood person with a fully formed personality, thoughts and opinions, and you can't necessarily just go out throwing insults at them. I mean, I still think there's a time and a place for that if you have some reasonable understanding of a person's character, like what I said about Logan Paul, for example, or Lauren Southern before. But in the case happened here, where he literally just was a fan who sent them letters, and they might have been a bit obnoxious, but that's the worst he ever got, then it wasn't called for saying that. And then he just unfortunately realized, oh, they are actually a real person, not a fictitious construct that exists in my brain that I can't fully, realize in my own like mental space.
I have no idea how he's going to be used going forward.
He might not even appear again, to be quite honest, but the point, if he doesn't, the point is still there to like tie it into everything else we've seen, in that there are very real consequences for talking or interacting with people you don't know in person or have never physically met, on the assumption, or rather the unconscious assumption, that they don't exist. Like they don't, like they're not a part of your life in such a way they feel meaningful.
Dehumanized.
Yes, that's exactly the phrase I was looking for.
Abstracted their humanity. They're like they're just like a TV show. The way that like that sort of exists is just like a story, not a
100%.
Not a real thing. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Do we have anything else to add to the show at this point?
I don't think. I mean, so I think I talked about everything that I wanted to say. I mean, I'm sure there's more that someone that was more with it than I this week could add. But that's all I've got.
Fair enough. Then in that case, we'll wrap up for the day. So time for scoring. Doc, do you want to go first, or shall
I? Sure, I can go first. I like these episodes quite a bit. I like the tangled web that everyone is in is more tangled. The knots are pulled tighter over the set of these 4 episodes. And even, new characters are, sliding into the fray. New connections reveal. I mean, the drama continues to be fascinating. Continues to be both extremely funny at times and is like even more tragic than ever. Without being, I mean, like the scene where Kaki like calls his mom and stuff like that. It's rough, but this whole thing to me has never felt really like I was being beat over the head with how sad it is by the show. So props to it for that. I just think it's been incredibly well written, well scripted. I love these animal people, and I mean I'm just so hyped up for like the final set of episodes. the airport scene. We must get the
Mm,
airport scene where just everything is happening. But yeah, I'm gonna give
yeah,
this. Um, what shall I give it? I will give it. I think I gave it a full 5 last time, and I don't see
you
any
did.
real reason to dock it this time. So I'm gonna give it 5 catfished baboons out of 5.
Oh no.
I guess
We
catfishing
one
is
cat get
not the right word, but
one. Well, actually,
yeah.
given that it was a cat doing it, so maybe that's actually more appropriate than not.
Yes, 2 words, catfished.
Although one Kakiana is too painful for my heart, I'm not sure I can take 5. Um, okay, so for me, like everything I've said still stands, of course. The mist, like this writing is so layered. Like
Hmm.
I don't think there's a single character I can't think like whose like own character arc and character problem is not mirrored, referenced, or replicated in a little way or some way in another character's. Like everything feels so intricately woven together where I can like you give me a character in this show and say, is there a character with a similarish problem or a similarish thing they're going through? And I'll be like, yes, this is it. And I
Hmm.
cannot think of another anime I've covered in such a long time, with the possible exception of stuff like, I don't know, Madoka or Penguin Drum, like the absolute creme de la creme that do similarly, where they weave their characters together and have them their own like arcs reinforce each other while still being distinct. But
Hmm.
beyond that, the mystery is still intriguing. It's actually still exciting. Like, there's moments where Odakawa is in genuine danger with this, It's not pulling its punches with respect to its appraisal of social media. About the only thing I wish is that perhaps it was a bit more, although maybe time will get to this, where it is a bit more even-handed in that. Because as I say, social media is not entirely an evil, despite all the shitty things it has done. I mean, this podcast would not exist without it for a start. That is certainly a win. And I'm not trying to put on the pedestal of like, where that
Oh,
absolves
it's up
all of it,
there.
but rather, well, okay, yeah. But rather by
Me
which I
too,
mean,
BLM,
there are
Warui
there
Deshou.
oh
It's the
no,
Mount
no.
Rushmore yeah.
Anyway, but nonetheless, like there's so much good that's done as well. And I wonder if the show might be a little more even-handed in that. But again,
Mm.
who's to say? Um, you know, it's still pretty tightly knitted, this show, and I've got a lot of respect for it for that, and a lot. I'm honestly really, really impressed by it. So I'm not going to dock it either. No, no docs, no docs. I'm going to give it 5 out of 5, and proper more fives Halloween parades. Um,
Hey,
it's potentially could be the first perfect show we've ever covered if
I
it ends
mean,
strongly.
do we think I've got a lot of confidence at this point that it's going to pay off as well as it
Mm,
has built up.
yeah.
You
I
know,
mean, not a single part of this show's script to me feels wasted. It
nope.
is as lean as one can get. And I don't mean to say like it's devoid of meat, but rather that it's just properly toned,
Hmm.
like it's well shaped, and now I'm starting to feel
There's
it
so
makes it sound
much,
it makes it
like
sound like I'm starting to talk like butts now.
someone's calf. But
On taxi is a perfectly sculpted, well-toned pair of buttocks. I don't
yes,
know. You come up
yes,
with your own metaphor. I'm going
the
out getting
glutes of
pissed in a
anime.
bit.
Yeah, I mean, man, everything is really connected, and there's stuff that I feel like has been deliberately backgrounded. Like we didn't get anything in this set of episodes on the eraser,
Oh,
and that Tanaka is very like I mean, he did do a thing where he shot up the cabaret club, but like we did not get a lot of moments like with him, and I feel like more of that's coming. And yeah, this show is such an elaborately laid thing that I'm really excited. It is sort of a Rube Goldberg machine of an
mhm.
anime, So
Yeah, but
it's
no part of it's falling over, no part of it's setting on fire. It's just crisp, and I love it.
mhm.
All right, that'll bring us to the end of the podcast then. So, thank you very much to everyone who's joined us tonight, or indeed at a lace point if you're listening to this after the facts, whether you're getting it on VOD or you're listening to it just in audio form. And thank you, of course, always to our patrons for supporting us through all of this. And of course, if you're listening to this on the free to the air, thank you in turn for your time and attention. If you want to help us out, Don't worry about the Patreon, as we said earlier on. You can join if you want to for like the last month, but that's up to you. But rather, more to the point, if you want to just like and subscribe on like YouTube and Apple Music, that kind of stuff, that always helps. Follow us on Twitter at Warui Deshou. Doc, where can people find you if they want to, talk to you about anthropomorphized people or butts or baboons or whatever?
At the Subtle Doctor on Twitter.
Good stuff. If you want to talk about any sort of monkey business with me, you can get me at Shadon1010. And with that, I guess it's time for us to wrap up and be on our way. I'm going to literally go and throw a coat on, shoes on, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to drink many, many pints of alcohol tonight.
Imbibe.
It's been a long week. Oh, much imbibing will be done this eve, my good sir. Oh, yes.
Good.
Anyway, thank you all again so much for joining us. Take care over around the world. Stay safe. Look after yourself. Look after each other. And from me and Doc, as we often say on this podcast, embrace everyone to the ends of the universe. Good night.
Bring back the brothers.
Do-do-do-do-do-do.